Hi everybody, this is Dee Dee Berg from In the Know Radio, and today we're here with my guest, Mike Mandel.
Hello.
Hi Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
That is great. So you've been a personal friend of mine and a mentor for many, many years.
A long time.
I'm really, really happy to interview you today because I have been privy to hear these most amazing hypnotic stories that you've had to share with us, being a forensic hypnotist.
Hypnosis is an amazing thing. What can I say?
It really is. But let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What was it that first got you interested in hypnosis?
Oh, it's ridiculous. I was 12 years old, so 50 years ago, 1965. My father said, any book I wanted I could have. And we went to the local bookstore and I saw this one. It was The Key to Hypnotism by Walter Gibson. I still have it, or a copy, maybe not that one. And I loved it as a kid, and I memorized the contents, thought, this is awesome. And I went out searching for someone to hypnotize, and I had two friends next door, Max and Wayne. And I said, can I hypnotize you guys? They're little kids, they don't know what I'm talking about. But Max thought it was a big joke, but Wayne, who was about 9 or 10, I got him into this powerful trance, made his hand all numb, he had glove anesthesia. I stuck pins, like a safety pin, not even sterilized or anything, I'm a kid, in his finger, and he couldn't feel it. He's bleeding and just sitting there, and his mom freaks out. But I thought, this is amazing stuff. And the funny thing is, I ran into Wayne about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, what are you doing these days? He used to hypnotize me. I said, funny you should ask. I said, you were patient zero, so we have him on our website now. But yeah, and that showed me, even as a kid, there's something to this. And I've always been useless with screwdrivers and hammers and putting cabinets together and barbecues. I can't do it. And I can't swim very well. I'll drown if I have to go more than 100 feet. But I've had the hypnosis thing nailed for about 50 years.
Yes, you have. I mean, you were inducted into the Coca Hall of Fame because you were first a stage performer. So.
I was. That started back in 1975. I did my first show January 29th. And a friend of mine saw me do a bunch of hypnosis stuff at a party. And it was a girl's birthday, and she came in and freaked out when she saw these people at a surprise party. Then I hypnotized her, and we did it again. She came in again, and just totally freaked out the second time. Kept giving her amnesia and sending her back outside, and everyone would, surprise, aha! It was hilarious. So a buddy of mine said, he was a booking agent, and said, I can get you gigs somewhere. And I went, what? He said, yeah, you got to be doing this professionally. I said, I don't know. And I was working for $90 a week at Bell Canada. I was a telephone operator. It was awesome. I was in an office of 150 women, one guy. Paradise. So $90 a week was below the poverty line. I was living with my parents, fortunately. So I thought, okay, I'll give this a shot. He got me a gig, did a couple of university shows, and it just took off, and I loved it. And that was the start of the stage show.
Okay. So what did you then branch into after that? Because
every aspect of hypnosis.
Tell me about that.
When I say every aspect, I mean every aspect that is science more than sort of spiritual. I don't do, past lives and things like that, but I really worked with a lot of de-traumatization techniques and developing new things like mindscaping you've seen me do, and working with people and causing rapid change really quickly. And then, of course, forensic hypnosis, which is working with the police and working with witnesses.
And this is the thing I find amazing, because I've heard you tell that story where you had somebody see a license plate in hypnosis across a dark parking lot. So can you tell us some more about those amazing police forensic hypnosis stories?
That was a good case. Actually, they did a reenactment of it. It was on Discovery on a program. And what happened was, this was a McDonald's drive-thru outside Toronto, and it was robbed at gunpoint. A young woman in her early 20s at the window at night. All she remembered was there was a guy there who shoved a gun through the window. She went into adrenal shock, adrenal overload, which actually sets the memory even stronger. And she got auditory exclusion. Everything was rushing sound. She had tunnel vision. Time seemed to slow down. She got tachypsychia. She was just traumatized by this. And the car left with the money, and the police couldn't get much information from her. So when I hypnotized her, they asked me to work on that case. It was really cool because she said, okay, and I took her back, regressed her to the person at the drive-thru right before the robbery. I said, what did they order? And she just rattled off what the order was. How much was it? She tells me the amount right away. I said, okay, now let the car come up to the window in slow motion and freeze frame it. She said, it's a van, which she'd said already, a gray van. She went, oh, there's a second person in the van. There's another guy. So she's able to describe them. The gun seemed huge in her memory, not surprising. And the van drives away. And I said, freeze frame it. She said, oh, it's at the other end of the parking lot. I said, can you see it? She said, no, it's too dark. I said, reach out with your hand and turn up the brightness. So she goes like this and goes, Oh, it's brighter now. I said, can you see the license plate? She said, it's too far away. I said, zoom in on it. She goes, oh, it's a Quebec license plate. And she rattles off these 6 digits. So the detectives are writing like this, because I always work with the detectives present. Anyway, we never caught the guys, but they found a gray van abandoned on the Quebec border, and she was right about like 5 of the 6 digits, and saw this unconsciously in the dark under adrenal stress from across a parking lot. And her unconscious mind had that information the whole time.
So what that suggests is that every single thing, we're like a digital recorder in here, whether we're aware of it or not. So how have you seen that play out maybe in not such a good way with people?
Well, with trauma, of course.
Right.
Because when, as you well know, if somebody has a phobic episode, they see a spider, they freak out, or a snake on a golf course, they're reenacting a state from a long time ago as though it's a present time event. And in reality, it's no longer relevant to their life, but it's never been processed.
Right. And I know with hypnosis, especially with phobias, it's really literally one session.
Yeah.
It's on or off.
Yeah. And it always kills me when people say, well, how many sessions? I said, well, one. I like what Richard Bandler said. He said, you throw your best stuff at him in the first session. What are you going to do in the second session? Your second best stuff? Like if the best stuff doesn't work?
So hypnosis is known for quitting smoking, for phobias. But again, I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more of these stories about the forensic hypnosis, because it's unbelievable that you could just tell this woman's mind what to do. Zoom in, put a light on it, etc.
The thing is, Didi, I didn't even believe this thing that we have this slow running recorder until I started reading. Wilder Penfield was doing brain surgery on a woman, touched her brain with a probe, and you know, you're wide awake when they do brain surgery, otherwise it's just not scary enough, right? We're going to cut the top of your head off, you're going to be wide awake, you know, it's horrible. But touched her brain with a probe. Instantly this woman flashes back to a memory. She was like 9 years old in the kitchen with her mother, and it wasn't even a significant event. She could remember what was playing on the radio, the smell of the food in the kitchen, even what she was thinking at that moment. Just a random memory. So then I started realizing if it was there, it could be accessed. And people like David Cheek have regressed people to the womb and childbirth and have proven that it was actually happening. So even though they did not understand language at that point, because the language matrix was not intact, the memory of the language was stored. And later, when their brain understood the language, then it was processed. Crazy stuff. So I started looking on a forensic hypnosis method, looking for one that would be different. Because the problem, when you're regressing someone to an event, is paramnesia, false memory syndrome. You start talking about something, the person starts remembering things that have never happened. So I demoed this with the RCMP at their main depot in Regina. We get a cop who's never been hypnotized, never mentioned hypnosis, say, you ever go up to a summer cottage? It's Canada, of course he has. Say, oh yeah, we had a cottage north of Moose Jaw. Okay, go back there in your mind, stretch out, be comfortable. Imagine we're sitting on the lawn outside the cottage, and it's a beautiful evening, the stars are coming out, and he goes, yeah. And I said, notice how bright the stars are when you're away from the city? Yeah, there's millions of them. I said, notice some of them were brighter than others. He goes, yeah, some of them were. Notice one was really bright? He goes, yeah, come to think of it, one was. And he's starting to get a bit nervous. And I said, was it moving? He goes,
you're leading.
It was moving across the sky, absolutely.
Leading question.
Just by asking, right? And I said, is it, we switched to present tense, is it a star or is it something else? He goes, it's a UFO. It's landing behind the trees. I forgot about it. Now, this guy will pass a polygraph test that he saw a UFO land behind the trees because of leading questions.
So you implanted a false memory in him.
With all the right intention, right?
Right.
That's what therapists did with everybody's parents were secretly Satanists and everybody was abused by their uncle, and even when they weren't.
Right.
Well, did your daddy ever touch you inappropriately? Yeah, I think he did. Implanting this. So I came up with a method that cannot cause false memory syndrome because you never ask the subject about the case. I don't talk to them about it before, during, or after the hypnosis, ever. Mm-hmm. So I've never had to go to court. If I did, I could say I never even mentioned the case to the person. So instead, hypnotize the person, give them metaphors for recall. Now, this is the case I remember that you found rather interesting. Outside Toronto, a different police service, a woman worked at a women's shelter for battered and abused women. Mm-hmm. And because she was a counselor, she never thought anything would happen to her. So she felt invulnerable. And there was, a couple of rooms there for women to look after them if their husbands were beating them or whatever. Horrific stuff. One night, she was leaving at 11 o'clock. There was no one staying there. She locked the place up, left. Her car was in a narrow alleyway. And this guy had been stalking her. And he was nuts, to use a medical term. Mm-hmm. He was in drag, wearing a dress that looked like the one she was wearing. He had the same fabric. He had a wig. He was made up to look like her. and she comes out and there's this tall, grotesque, grinning male version of her. He attacks her. She freaks out and screams. He runs away. She's pissed off, wants to catch this guy. Calls the police. So they give her an interview, do the whole interview. She's determined to get him. And they give her 16 photographs of the perpetrators who match this description. I think it's a 50-mile area for this kind of thing would be reasonable. She looked, I don't know. She said he had a wig, he had makeup. I can't tell. He said, well, look again. She said, it doesn't matter how many times I look. I can't tell. So they hit a dead end. They called me 5 weeks later and said, will you work with her to see if you can cause some sort of recall? Sure. We meet now the following week. It is 6 weeks after the crime. So put her in trance. We're sitting and talking to a conversational method. So I'm there with the detective, the police videographer, and a female constable. So I give deposition on camera that I'm an expert in all of this. We sit her down. The cop's sitting there ready to interview her. They get the camera focused on her and the cop. I start doing the induction. He goes into trance too. He's never been hypnotized, and he's like, ugh, just gone. So the videographer had the sense to turn the camera a bit so this guy wasn't in the frame. And I just give her metaphors. You're walking along a beach, a wonderful beach, and you find an old-fashioned key on the ground and decide to take it with you. Implication, this is going to unlock something later on, right? So then you're in a comfortable, old, pleasant house. Have to be careful how I frame it. Maybe she had a scary house as a kid, so I'm saying a pleasant house full of interesting drawers and cupboards where you can find what you need to find. Embedded command, find what you need to find. This key's going to unlock it. You'll only come back from hypnosis as quickly as you find everything you need. So this happens. It takes her 3 minutes to come out of trance. It takes the detective 9 minutes to come out. I don't know what the heck he remembered. And they give her the same 16 photographs, and she goes, it was that guy. I mean, that fast. Somebody's climbing in the window. It's the guy. So the same 16 photographs, she nails it immediately, said it was him. And they said, well, how can you be so... It was him. Okay. They go make the arrest. The guy comes running out of his house with his house coat and pajamas on. He said, thank God you're here. I knew you were going to catch me. He said, I'm going crazy with the stress of this. I need help. I need psychiatric help. They said, okay, read your rights. Read whatever you want. Just get me some help. So they haul this guy away. Mm-hmm. He winds up in the Clark Institute of Psychiatry in Toronto, undergoes chemical castration.
Wow.
And I taught this to the New York State Troopers at a lecture I was doing at a seminar there. And one of the guys there was Dr. Peter Collins, who's a forensic psychiatrist. And he said, I coincidentally did the chemical castration in that case. I know the one he's talking about.
Oh my gosh.
So it's just a weird synchronicity. But the power, the point is, this woman's mind, without even a very deep trance, was able to access sufficient information to get the help for this guy.
To pinpoint him after she couldn't.
Yeah.
But that's amazing.
After 6 weeks,
amazing.
yeah.
So didn't you tell me once that you were responsible to create new wording for the tasering?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Google the Mandel Taser Challenge. It's online.
Yeah, because this is interesting because the wording they use when you, as a hypnotist as well, the wording they previously used, we kind of laughed at. It was ridiculous.
It was terrible. See, when police arrive at an altercation, when someone is under adrenal stress, their critical faculty, which filters information, is largely offline, and people will respond to suggestion. So when you say, police, don't move, if I said that to somebody in a normal state, they make a mental picture in a 30th of a second of what it means to move, and go, oh, that's what we don't want to do. I'll delete that. Under adrenal stress, you say, don't move. The person makes a picture of move, but they don't get around to deleting it, so they run away.
Right.
So I said, you say, police, stand still. And we teach them what to say instead of what to tell them not to do, right? So instead of don't do this, we tell them what to do. That's why you never say to someone under stress, don't panic.
Right.
Because they make a representation
Stay
of panic.
calm.
And, remain calm. So they brought the taser to Canada. The RCMP got it first. And the taser challenge they were using, when you point this thing at someone and fire, 70,000 volts into their body, and they go like this, and their friends go, oh, he's okay, he's waving, he doesn't need any help. Meanwhile, it's convulsing. You have to say something before you fire it. But their taser challenge was something like 50 syllables long. I'm Constable so-and-so of the RCMP, and I'm holding in my hand the electronic mobilization device. The guys run away or attack the cop by now, and they didn't get a chance to fire it. So they're pissed off with this. So they wound up hiring me and said, will you linguistically design a taser challenge for us instead? And I said, yes, provided you call it the Mandel Taser Challenge, so you can find it online. one L in Mandel. So anyway, the new one is Police! Exclamation mark. You don't have to say, I'm Constable so-and-so of the... Just keep it short and simple. Their processing skills are minimal because you're going to use it on someone who's crazy or someone who's stoned out of their brain. So you have to be very simple. Police! Exclamation mark. Stand still. Tell them what to do. Or, double bind, you'll get a powerful electric shock. So it's either stand still and comply or get a powerful shock and comply.
So you give them one choice or the other.
Yeah, and when presented with two choices, the human brain typically does not go to 3, 4, 5. Well, I'm going to run away. Well, I'm going to get my friends to attack you. Well, so they'll only choose between the two, and that's how classic double bind works.
Standing still is a lot better than I will give you an electric shock.
Right, because we know electricity is bad. We know if you stick a screwdriver in the wall socket or go golfing in a thunderstorm waving a 9-iron over your head, bad stuff can happen with electricity.
Exactly. So again, power of the mind is incredible. So what have you seen that we would call miraculous, like some kind of miraculous healing?
Oh gosh, wouldn't know where to start in 40 years of doing hypnosis.
How about health? Start with miraculous health healings.
A little boy with a horrific wart, which of course is human papillomavirus, would not respond to, about 20%, you burn them away, you freeze them away with liquid nitrogen, they keep coming back. And this kid had been through hell with this wart in his hand that was quite large. It kept growing back bigger all the time. And he had, his school bag had like knights and swords and Lord of the Rings kind of stuff on it. And so that gave me the key. And it just gave him a metaphor of, knights in shining armor. This is a wonderful time in history with these good guys and these good knights with swords and wizards. And across the way was this village. And they had this horrific tower, and it was evil. Now, I'm describing the wart. It's 60 feet tall. It's a cylinder, and it's all rotten and nasty. And they tried firing arrows at it, and nothing worked. And then one day, they'd had enough. And all the good knights from the town went and invaded, and they hacked it with their swords, and they threw lamps of oil on and burned it. And finally, they hitched their horses to it and pulled it right out of the ground. And this kid's in trance, like just in state listening. And it left a crater in the ground, and they went back a few days later, and even the crater had disappeared, and the ground was nice, and the evil empire was gone. The kid's like, wow. Now, I fleshed it out considerably more than I'm telling you right now.
Right.
But kid went into trance. It took about a week. And the wart just dried up and fell off and left a small crater. And then a few days later, that was gone. And it was scar-free.
Amazing.
So his unconscious mind is able to translate that and map it across into making changes. We used to think it was the person's global immune system attacking the wart. We know it isn't. Because you can make warts on only one hand disappear. So something's happening locally that will affect only those. And it's not surprising when you realize, a study done in England. When I was a kid in England, they had puppet shows, which were Punch and Judy, hand puppets. Hi, Punch, hi, Judy. And they were really violent and hit each other with clubs and stuff. And they did a test. They had Punch and Judy, and they had these nasty amorphous things, that purpley brown things that came and attacked Punch and Judy and tried to kill them. And then these big white puffy things came and swallowed up the purple and brown things, and Punch and Judy came back and they were okay. And they showed this puppet show to pre-kindergarten kids. And they sit there and watch it, wow. Then they take saliva swabs, and all of them show increased antibody production, increased macrophage production. Their immune system is responding to watching a flipping puppet show.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I'm in a TV-free zone now. What's going in your head all the time is having an effect.
Well, Eldon Taylor says that you can't stay out of a trance for over a minute while watching the flicker rate on the TV screen.
It. Yeah.
So think of all those commercials that are going in, and it's just going straight in when we're in a trance.
It's the most ubiquitous hypnotic induction in the world. And the longer someone watches TV, the lower they slump in their chair, the more flaccid their face becomes, the slower their blink reflex, they will exhibit all the signs of deep trance.
Of a trance, okay. So what other stories do you have for us? I mean, that's amazing. You told me once about a woman with asthma. She had asthma for 30 years.
Right, she was on 2 puffers. Actually, that was in this office here. 30 years, and worked with her, presumed that the asthma was caused by a positive intention. Her unconscious mind was producing this symptom for a reason. Worked with her, that was one session, follow-up online about 10, 11 days later, and she is so much better. She's off the puffers, her breathing's improved, every aspect of her life is improved, and I just got an email from her about a week ago, and now she's coming to study hypnosis with me.
Amazing,
because it's affected her life to such a large degree.
Right, so that's almost miraculous. I mean, 30 years of puffers?
It is, and my niece is a naturopath, and she's a doula, so she works, or was working at the time with, women who are birthing, and she had a great story. Because it's her, I know it's true because I trained her in hypnosis.
Right.
But she said that she had one subject she'd worked with right up until the birth, and in the birthing process, the baby's cord was wrapped around its neck, and she re-hypnotized the mother and spoke to the baby through the mother and asked the baby to untangle itself, and it did. She said the baby turned in the womb and took the cord off its neck.
That's
just
amazing.
Fascinating stuff. So she's able to affect the baby through speaking to the mother. We don't know the limits.
And, well, the thing is, she wasn't limited.
No.
Denise, because she thought, I can do this.
Yeah.
Because she thought she could do it. She tried it. And when she tried it, she did it. So what else do you think we're capable of? Like,
I don't know.
What do you think it is we stop ourselves
I don't know. I don't know what the limits are. I really don't. And that's why I tell my students, pretend there are no limits. I mean, reasonably so. I mean, you can't leap off the CN Tower and expect to fly, because gravity has a way of getting us anyway. But pretend there are no limits as to what can be done, even in one session. And you'll run into the limits eventually anyway, but you'll extend yourself so much further. What's the old adage? You know, aim for the stars, you might hit the moon anyway.
Right.
You know, aim 100 feet, you might hit 10 feet. Aim as high as you can.
Well, one of
with
the
this
old
stuff.
hypnotic tests was to put a person and make them into a board between two chairs and then stand on them.
Well, I used to do that, full body catalepsy.
Yeah.
I did it on a number of TV shows. In fact, on Albert Schultz's Order of Canada. And it's quite easy to do, but the reason I don't do it anymore is Milton Erickson discovered that he had a number of people come in who had back problems, and when he hypnotized them, the only thing he discovered was they had all been in that position on those chairs 3 months previously.
They were subjects.
It's a delayed response.
Right.
So I thought, I better not take a chance on it.
Yeah, probably. So what's the craziest thing that you've made someone do, like on a stage show or even just for fun?
Gosh, where do you start? I used to make UFOs appear outside the venue. That was a lot of fun. And say that when we went outdoors after the show was over, you'd be complaining because there was no show. I never did it.
Right.
And then they're following me outside because they're so mad that they've been waiting for hours. And I said, there's a problem with the sound. We can't do the show. And say, what? So they've got amnesia. So they follow me outside. And when they do, I say, what the heck is that? And all of them, oh shit, what is that? And he said, what is it? It's green, it's splashing green. They go, no, look at the red, look at the red. And you see them. We got some of them on camera years ago, and they're just so freaked out. I said, I think it's getting closer. And they're like, it's getting closer. And they're torn between
really
being
believe
terrified and wanting to see what it is. I said, I think it's friendly. It's trying to land. And people are waving. And what a laugh. I put sharks in a swimming pool. I did a private party years ago and told them there were sharks in the pool. And the guy just goes over like this. And the owner of the place saying, we just keep them there, because it's nice for them. And nice, you got sharks in your pool. And getting outraged with him. So we can twist reality, as you well know. And
tell us about that twisting reality, because I view hypnosis as anything's possible. Our belief is suspended while under hypnosis.
Yeah.
So have you ever made someone exhibit a talent that they wanted to have? Like, say somebody doesn't believe, they have a fantastic voice, but they don't believe it's that great, and then you put them under hypnosis and there's no limits. So
not had the voice one. I'll tell you one I did do. I was on a program years ago. They had me on 4 times. Every time I was on, the ratings went up. It's actually a youth program. And they had about 4 kids who had they qualified for this by saying something they wanted to do that they'd never had the nerve to do. Okay. And the one girl was fantastic. She always wanted to dance like a maniac, quote unquote, and always felt self-conscious in front of people. Mm-hmm. And I put her in a trance. They put the music on. This girl was unbelievable. I mean, everybody would think, oh, she must have learned this somewhere. Right. But it was because she was dancing with zero inhibition. So it just gone with the music.
Again, like we have so many... Can say something a little bit about that, about all these resources that we have inside that we're not tapping into. How can what does hypnosis do to bring that out in us? Well,
hypnosis is an amplifier of human experience. So anything we can do better with hypnosis.
Okay.
Whether it's sports or reading or interaction with other humans, whatever it is. So if we deal with it as an amplifier, we can aim it at whatever we want. And a lot of the time, as you well know from your practice, Dee Dee, that people have resources for stuff, but they just can't get to them. Mm-hmm. Or they can't get to them in context. I deal with a lot of people who have problems with public speaking, whereas I love it. I'm going to be at Western University in September for the 41st year in a row. 41 years performing. Last time we got the picture from the stage, it's over 6,000 kids in the audience. Wow. And that turns my crank. I love being up there. Yeah. But some people are terrified if you're around in front of 20 people, right? So they say, I've got to go make a presentation. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm terrified. Say, what's the problem? Well, I can't speak in front of people. What do you mean in front of? I can't speak in front of a group. Well, say it was your own family. Could you speak in front of them? Well, of course. So you do have the resource. Well, yeah, but that's different. Well, how's it different specifically? Well, I don't know. So they have the resource, but they cannot get to it in the context they want it. Right. So hypnosis can bring it into the context, whereas the moment they pick up the microphone or step up to the lectern or whatever, bang, all the resources are online instantly.
Fantastic. Okay, so what else have you seen in your career in terms of, again, what we would call miraculous?
Just sometimes they can be throwaway things. Some of them are so simple. I spoke in Cornwall, Ontario years ago for the local Chamber of Commerce, and a woman came up afterwards, and her daughter had some issues, and she was very concerned about her. The problem wasn't the daughter, who was in her 20s. The problem was the mom being so stressed out about the daughter. The daughter was going to get over it. And I told a metaphor, which is the story of the liana vine, which John Grinder told me, and just slowly told her this over a glass of wine in this pub. When I say slowly, I mean it took 2 minutes. And she went right into trance because I intersected her. And when she went into trance, she stopped drinking, her lower lip changed size, her blink reflex slowed. I got to the end of the story. And she said, wow, that's some story. I said, that's right. She said, sounds like it could be someone's life. And I went, sure could. Told her a story about a plant growing in South America. No reference to her daughter. And then I spoke to the people who organized the conference a couple of weeks later, and she had gone hands off with her. She'll be back when she's ready. I'm going to stop stressing about it. And that's hypnosis. It's a 2-minute change, just talking to someone. It's a wonderful thing.
Do you think we're all hypnotized in this current reality?
Absolutely.
Like when you think about it? Because there's so much more we're capable of, but I think it's our own belief system
I think so
that
too.
stop us.
Beliefs will lock things up. It creates a reality tunnel where we exclude information that doesn't fit that reality. And we all fall prey to it. Mandel used to say, in order to hypnotize someone, you've got to bring them out of the trance they're already in first.
Yeah, and I think we have a society of unwritten rules that says you are capable of this, you aren't capable of that.
This far and no further. Yeah.
So
it's funny, but that can happen in so many ways. I had a keynote to deliver in Niagara-on-the-Lake years ago. I went right from another event, got there, and walked through the room. It was a big corporation, but a small group of people, maybe 40 people upstairs at this restaurant. And there was a big open bar, and these guys were blasted, standing around this bar. I'm going to do a keynote to people who just finished dinner, and now they're really into the booze. And I was very stressed out. I went back in the hall, and I shook it off, and I changed my state, and said, I'm going to go back in as a clean slate in a different state, change my breathing and everything, walk back in. John Grinder said, you can say anything like that, provided you're willing to look for overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So I went, I'm going to look for evidence that I was just wrong. And I walked in, I looked around the room. They weren't a bunch of drunks. There were people laughing happily, talking. Half of them are drinking club soda. They weren't drunk at all. It was like a bar, standing by the bar, late, what's going to happen? And my reality tunnel had said, these are a bunch of drunks and they're not going to listen to you. Now, I would have been totally unresourceful up there, and it would have all gone to...
It would have tanked because of your own belief.
Right. But once I saw it for what it was, I did a great keynote, and they were receptive and attentive, and it was wonderful. What veneers, what reality tunnels are we forcing ourselves to look through that are not good for us?
That's what I'm thinking. So what would you say to people out there about this reality that we're in terms of the societal implications?
Where do you start with that one, right? Because there's tunnels within tunnels within tunnels. How far down the rabbit hole do you go?
For example, constant watching of the news. And
gosh.
We're always, in fear of terrorists. Or what would you say about things like that?
Well, George Estabrooks in 1948 wrote the book Hypnotism. He was a Canadian who was professor of psychology at Colgate University in the U.S. And he did a lot of work on how you could change people's state politically and so on, working with hypnosis. His belief, he was tied in with the MKULTRA project, as was M.T. Ornay out of the University of Pennsylvania. Changing people, attempting to turn people into hypnotic couriers, hypnotic killers, whatever. And the whole idea was, any government nowadays knows the way you control a population is you keep them afraid. A frightened population, their critical faculty is essentially offline. They're getting PGO spikes in their brain. A scared population just wants resolution of their fear. So whatever you present to them, they will tend to, whatever it is.
They'll accept it.
And when we do not permit ourselves to be exposed to threats of, terrorism, measles, flu, whatever the next big thing is that, we got to panic about, our lives go a lot better. like I said, I've been TV free for 8 years now. We did it for a 30-day experiment. And I said, I speak about this stuff getting into the brain. Why am I still watching it? Exactly. And now it is such a foreign thing. If I'm in an airport and there's a screen, I go, this is a different world. My life has slowed down. We have better conversations. We talk more. We walk more. We cook more.
Okay, so we are in a hypnotic reality.
We definitely are.
Definitely. Okay.
You have to ask yourself who the controllers are.
And that's the question.
That's the dangerous question.
That's the question. So what else do you know about this secret hypnosis? For example, you were saying military was doing experiments.
Well, I know Esther Brooks did some really interesting work where they were setting up hypnotic couriers. And it was a binary system. So you could hypnotize someone in, say, Washington. And this courier would be given a lot of information to memorize. They'd go overseas behind the Iron Curtain. And it would only be a certain person saying a certain phrase that would put them back into trance and bring the information out.
And then what would happen to the information afterwards?
Well, then they would delete it then.
They'd have amnesia.
Right. I guess that would be the theory. But the point was, even if they were captured by the enemy, unless it was the right person asking or giving the code word, it wouldn't work. So they found they could get hypnotic couriers and lock information up, and they'd be essentially fearless while they were doing this. But then they went on attempting to fragment personalities. And they found you couldn't do it with hypnosis alone. You have to bring in drugs and trauma and all of these things to affect people badly.
Okay. And what happened when they fragmented personalities?
Well, that's what some people think. People like Sirhan, the assassin of... Was that Bobby Kennedy? Yeah. Or was it Martin Luther King? I lose track of all these assassins. But people believe they were setting up a Manchurian candidate. You fragment the personality, and so you have one part of the personality that doesn't have access to the other parts, and that's the one that acts at a different signal. But hypnosis alone won't produce that.
So what can you tell us about that?
Can't tell you anything except to kill you.
Anyway. Okay, so do you believe this to be true, though? This can be done?
Oh, I think it's happening all the time. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not in the way that we see in films and so on, but it's a huge area, and anybody with a computer can Google this and discover there have been all sorts of horrific experiments, often on people, populace that had no understanding of what was happening to them, even LSD experiments, I think in Montreal, with no knowledge of the populace.
Right.
And if you see people just as fodder who can be worked with for your own nefarious purposes, then...
So what do you think that... Can people really be made to do things under hypnosis that they wouldn't normally do?
Yes, but not that will violate their moral code.
Okay.
See, they'll do all kinds of things they wouldn't normally do, like quack like ducks and stuff. But the context is everything with hypnosis. Erickson said, and he was adamant, that you cannot get people to violate their moral code. Other people said, well, you can find ways around it. You can tell a woman, oh, you're having a shower on a hot summer day, and she'll take off all her clothes. I'm skeptical of that, because the unconscious mind, which is still monitoring, knows it isn't a hot summer day and knows what's happening. So there's always the thing called the hidden observer. And Hilgard discovered this. And the idea was, you've got a part of your brain, no matter how much you try to seal it off from knowing stuff, there's a part of your brain that still knows. It's still observing. Right. And so you can find it with ideomotor signals. Yes, I did still know what was going on, even though I said I didn't. Well,
that's what you likened it to for your people on stage. It's like there's a part of them that's up there taking the suggestions in from the hypnotist, and there's that hidden observer in the back that's going, ha ha ha, isn't that interesting?
What a crazy thing you're doing.
And it's the same thing with sleep, isn't it? Because I know when I'm asleep, if I hear a set of footsteps in the middle of the night,
it's very specific, the type of sound that will wake you up.
Yeah, I will wake up out of a dead sleep because all of a sudden those aren't the familiar footsteps that I'm used to.
Whereas a car can go by blasting stereo and you may not react.
Yeah, and we'll just block it out. Mm-hmm. So there always is that hidden observer. So can you say a little bit more about...
Well, the whole hidden observer theory is very interesting, and it's... Erickson did experiments where he'd have somebody with a gun told to go and shoot somebody, and you can even be told, oh, this is an evil person, he's trying to destroy the country, and you just have to go and kill him. Of course, it's a blank or whatever. The person would not carry it out. And even if they did, there's no way of proving it, because you're not going to let someone actually kill someone to make a point, right?
Right.
So the hidden observer theory says there's a part of them going, oh, this is still a test of some kind, and they will stop me before I pull the trigger. There's a part of them that always knows what's going on. But then, to complicate things immeasurably, the Oxford Guide to Hypnosis said, there's a whole other school of thought that said there is no hidden observer. The hidden observer is created by looking for the hidden observer. So when you say after the fact, did you have a hidden observer? It creates one that says, yeah, I was there all the time.
A leading question again.
Yeah.
It's like
a lot of the time
like a Mandelbrot.
Like a Mandelbrot, yeah. Bring in the fractals.
Yeah, it's like a vision within a vision within a vision.
Wrapped in an enigma.
No, hypnosis is truly an amazing thing. Now, I also understand that in addition to that, you're a forensic handwriting expert.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, because
Sure.
you've shared a little in the past about what is so revealing, like the felon's claw, for example.
Yeah. Felon's claw is found in the handwriting of 80% of people in the American prison system. And it's a lower loop that does not come back as a loop, but has a jagged slash to the left. And it's a manipulative personality. It's actually a guilt-filled personality. This is somebody who will do crazy and stupid things because they feel guilty, and then they can punish themselves by getting caught.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's intriguing. I haven't seen it in writing much in the daily world, but it does show up. As you know, I do forensic handwriting lectures in the college and university circuit. And it's amazing what you see. In 1992, I took a day-long course with a woman called Elaine Charrell, who's the best graphologist in Canada, bar none. And she said, "You got a knack for this. I think you should go and study it." So I studied with International Graphoanalysis Society first, went to Chicago, did an internship, then got certified, and then I've continued to study it for the last 20 years, and it's phenomenal. The writing never lies.
I know sometimes, is it not true that the police will send you handwriting?
Oh, sure.
Or victims' families will send you handwriting?
You can tell if the person's suicidal or not. It's a very good predictor. I worked with a poisoning case where this guy was drugging women and their husbands at a summer cottage, where high-end area, and a lot of nice cottages in the area, and they'd meet for a blowout once a year, about 12 or 14 people, and every year after that blowout, people would have blackouts. Mm-hmm. And they, I drank too much. But one of the people at the party was a police officer.
Okay.
And he approached me and he said, "I think we're being drugged."
Wow.
Everybody. And I said, "Well, what are you eating? Food and everything?" He said, "No, just drugs. And just alcohol." So I checked with a pharmacist. I went to Shoppers Drug Mart, and I said, "What would be the likelihood of phenobarbital added to alcohol? How much would you need to produce unconsciousness?" He said, "That's a very specific poison, toxicological question. I had my card with forensic hypnotist on." He said, "Oh," so he got me all the printout. I said, "I think it's phenobarb," because phenobarb was the original Mickey Finn. They say slipped him a Mickey. This is before people were roofied. Mm-hmm. And what Mickey Finn did was he ran a bar somewhere in the U.S., and if you could drink 2 of these drinks, he'd give you $100 or something. Well, you drink 2 and you'd wind up in the alleyway unconscious, and they'd have your wallet. So what was happening was we figured this guy, I said, look for if he has access to barbiturates, and it turned out he had a disabled daughter in a wheelchair, and she was on phenobarb for convulsions, and he was using her drugs and was putting knockout drops in everybody's drinks and abusing all the women while they're unconscious.
Well, their husbands were unconscious.
Well, they were all unconscious.
Wow.
So it's just horrific. And so they got me his handwriting, and he had horrific stuff in it. No moral code, twisted values, deceit. I mean, terrible, terrible stuff.
Right. So the handwriting is truly revealing.
Absolutely. It never lies.
Never lies. Well, what else have you seen in people's handwritings? Like, for example, if the police sent you something, what could you...
I did one for, I've done for Canada Border Services back when it was Canada Customs. Just things, suicide notes and threatening notes. A pretty big zoo sent me a memo pad with threatening notes on it.
Okay. What were you able to tell from
They wanted to
handwriting?
know which employee was doing it. They were disguising their writing.
Oh.
So we could see, we get the employee's writing they suspect, and it's this. Look at it under magnification. You look for telltale things. With document examination, you can tell what it is. But the personality is the real key, the stuff that shows up.
So what is something that would be blaringly obvious?
Oh, something called a maniac D.
So...
Maniac D is when someone writes a line of writing, and if the line of writing, the last word ends in a D, but the stem of the D isn't vertical like the rest of the writing, it goes off sharply to the right, even once. This is someone who's so out of control that they're just still plowing forward and then coming back to the beginning of the line. That's found in the writing of really horrific people. The Zodiac Killer, who was never captured.
Really?
That's one of the ways you can tell it was the real writing of a serial killer, was because he has the manic D throughout his writing.
So what I'm kind of hearing is, like, whether it's handwriting or unconscious, there are things that reveal who we truly are.
Yeah.
What's another one besides handwriting or what is it that somebody else may be revealing to us that we're not aware of unless we're looking
predators,
for?
People who are predators. And psychopathy, Robert Hare, the world authority out of Vancouver, he said that they used to think that it was 1 out of 100. Now they think it's 1 out of 50. Has no moral code.
Oh,
No
wow.
moral code.
Psychopath.
Yes, which sociopath, psychopath, the terms are pretty well interchangeable. But the whole idea that somebody will be living with no moral code, they'll manipulate, very, very skilled. They can be very glib. Well, I caught you in this. No, and they can just sell you a story really, really easily. And a lot of them rise to the top of industries, the judiciary, churches, the military, because they use their skills to get there. But then a lot of them are lower functioning and just prey on other people.
Amazing.
And that shows up in handwriting too.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
And what would be a telltale sign if I were watching a person that they had these skills?
Oh, look for stuff like people who aren't emoting at all. Like psychopaths, the only emotion they seem to feel is anger.
Oh, that's
They
interesting.
don't feel fear. That's why they'll do these crazy things and get away with it. And so a psychopath, if his best friend dies, he doesn't feel anything. Mm-hmm. So he'll go to the funeral home. Watch people who are modeling other people's emotions. They're blank, they're looking around, and then they're taking on the physiology and crying like everyone else, but they're not
kind of
feeling
acting.
it.
They're
Yeah,
acting.
very much so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
People who lock on other people. I've seen it too many times. I mean, my wife's experienced it. Somebody on a subway just locked on her. There's a psychopathic look.
Right.
And when she got off the train and he followed her up the road and she managed to get in her car and
That's
get
scary.
home. Yeah. You have to be aware of our surroundings. Everybody isn't nice.
No, they aren't. And unless you've had the experience, unfortunately, unless that's come into your worldview,
Yeah.
it's hard to believe that.
Yeah. And in martial arts, we say, if you get in a confrontation, if you get in an incident, it's because you screwed up.
Okay, so tell me about that, because weren't you the first certified trainer in British Jiu-Jitsu in
the
Canada?
world, yeah.
Oh, in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the guy for it now, along I've got proteges and so on. But no, I taught, I was a self-defense teacher. I taught Ontario Provincial Police. I taught 50 of their instructors. Mm-hmm. So we go in and slam them through the mat on the first day, and then everybody's really nice after that. But if you get in a confrontation, no matter what your skill level is, the whole point is to avoid them. And one of the best things you can do, and it's hard, but it's the witching hour rule. If you're out and about after 11 p.m., every hour up until about 3 a.m., your chance of being in a violent encounter keeps climbing. And after about 3 a.m., it starts descending again. So I say, wherever you got to be, make sure you're there by 11.
Right.
And
don't put yourself in the position.
There's no need to go out at 11.
Okay, but tell us about self-defense, because this is, again, I know there's psychological things within self-defense, like when, the psychological yell or the quick surprise kick or something like that. So tell us how you would use this, whole psychological defense as a defense mechanism.
Well, a lot of it's proxemics, staying out of people's range.
Right.
And recognizing when people violate your personal space, there's a reason for it. Okay. And the whole psychology we teach people, I don't teach women to defend themselves. I teach women to attack evil people. So they turn their whole mindset psychologically. Instead of, I'm a victim, it's like, I just become your worst nightmare, buddy. You're attacking the wrong person here.
Right.
And when you change someone's mindset and show them how to detect and adequately evaluate threat, you're using the psychology of self-defense.
Okay, so again, you're changing mindset. It's all about perception, is it not?
Right. And one of the problems we run into with women studying self-defense is even if they get really good at it, and they have to use specific techniques for their body type and the fact that they're not, they don't have the upper body strength that men have typically. The problem is a lot of the time they're afraid to do it in case they just anger the guy.
Okay.
So some guys messing with them are, going to attack them. They're afraid to jam their thumbs into his eyes in case they just infuriate him.
Well,
when in reality,
he'd be going like
it's
this.
the best thing you can do to save your life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but when push comes to shove and they're being attacked, they'll do it though.
Some do and some don't.
Oh no,
I
that's
worked
unfortunate.
when I was teaching Peel Regional Police, a self-defense teacher there with the police department. He told me that he was teaching a course because a woman out in the west end of Toronto was being followed by a guy at night. So once again, witching hour. She's out after 11, doesn't need to be, walking along the road beside this forest.
Oh.
And he's following her and he's getting closer and closer and she panicked and she ran into the forest. And that's how she was raped.
Wow.
Nearly killed.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Too bad she
Critical
didn't have
faculty shut down.
Well, yeah, because like you said, and again, because you were relating that in terms of when our adrenaline goes up, our memories are even more stored. Mm-hmm. So I know that you do a lot of studying about the brain. So what can you tell us about the way the brain stores information?
Well, you're going to store emotional things. It's going to go in the amygdala first, which is actually a pair of organs in your brain, almond sized and shaped. And that's going to set, it also is the way we process language. that is offensive to us. We get words that are painted words. That's why, especially in hypnosis, we never want to use words like pain, agony, horror, because they're going to have much more of an effect.
They have a charge, don't they?
They have a charge. New memories are formed in the hippocampus, and when they are given a context in our lives, they then migrate out, I think, to the neocortex. This takes a long time, though. And so what happens is when the memory migrates, we remember the memory, but we lose the context a lot of the time. For example, say someone tells you, Charlottetown is the capital of Prince Edward Island, and you remember that, and you still remember it now. You don't remember when you learned that or how you learned it. You just remember the memory. But the problem with memory, and we're back to the whole forensic hypnosis thing, Dee Dee, the problem with memory is we don't remember anything. We remember an edited version of what we last remembered.
Right.
So every time we re-access a memory, we are editing it, emphasizing parts, changing others, and that becomes the new foundation that's edited again next time. And every time you're forming a memory, you have a protein which goes around the neuron. It's protein kinase C, and this sets the memory. Now, how can a protein give you a memory of something like an event? It's beyond me, but it does. But it keeps shifting over time. It keeps changing and changing.
So you never really, truly remember the original memory.
Don't remember anything.
And this is true because if you relate, like if you're with your cousins or your brother and you say, remember that time when we were little? And everybody will, the way
4
you
different versions of it
is completely different from the way others remember it.
Same with a car accident or something. You get 5 different witnesses give you 5 different stories.
And it's based on their filters as well. It's based on pre-programming. Yeah. So what is it you can tell us about our unconscious programming?
Well, any unconscious program you have, whether it's from trauma as a child, whether it's from modeling parents or authority figures, or even a fictional person like Superman or something, whatever we do, we set up these perceptions in advance. We set up these filters, and they go through our lives. All our information is going through those for the rest of our lives. And we often don't even know what these things are. And we can find out with ideomotor signals and so on, we can find out where they came from. Oh, this was installed by your mother. She always said, for example, my sister set up the program. My mother always said, oh, snakes are dangerous. My mom freaked when she saw snakes. My sister got a snake phobia. Caught it from her mom. Never even saw it.
So they get passed down generations.
Yes,
fears and phobias get passed down.
All kinds of stuff. So these things that are set in our childhood, usually before age 7 by the imprint phase, have an effect for the rest of our lives. And one of the things I tell my students is, you must know this, you meet someone and you'll like them right away. Some people, you just click. Other people, you meet them and there's you don't like them so much. You can't figure out why, right? And I always say to them, immediately ask yourself, who does this person remind me of? And you'll get the answer. Oh, it's so-and-so. And you're putting a veneer of a different person on them and responding to that rather than that individual, whether it's good or bad. So these kinds of filters and reality tunnels are happening all the time.
So what is really true then? Is there any such thing as truth then?
Oh, yeah, there is truth. And truth is knowable as well. It absolutely is.
I mean, if we're just made up from these old programs and beliefs
we have old
that have
programs. I like to think we're more than that. But, the Greeks and Aristotle, they got to this. I mean, your heritage, they got to this thousands of years ago. Well, 1,000 years ago anyway. Can't remember how long. But things like, is there truth and is truth knowable? What's the epistemology? Absolutely. I had a friend of mine who was a police trainer, and we were talking about filters and all of these things, perceptual filters, and he said, no one can make a definite statement about anything. And I said, including the one you just made?
Right.
And he went, oh, I got to rethink
That's
this.
a very definite statement about being
people say,
definite.
You cannot be dogmatic about what you believe. I said, does that include the dogma you're putting on me right now, that I'm not allowed to be dogmatic?
Right.
We've got to be very careful with this. There is truth, and it is knowable. I heard one guy say to a professor once, he said, can you even prove I exist? And the professor just looked over his reading glasses and said, and who should I say is asking? Which is...
So what do you think ultimately we're...
Sorry, I was going to interrupt because your point is so good. It needs one final thing.
Go ahead.
I know what you mean, though, because we don't... The encapsulations, we don't respond to the world, we respond to our perceptions
Filters
of the world.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of wondering...
That so nicely.
I'm kind of wondering, what is it really? Like, if we're always responding through our perceptions or our filters...
What is it? Responding?
Oh, we're responding.
Why do I wait now?
We're responding through our filters, our perceptions. What are we missing? That's the key question, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Because if we are processing only about 7 bits of information per second, George Miller, I think in 1963, said that. Unconsciously, we're processing about 3 to 20 million bits of information. And we're also running our heart valve synchronization, 500 liver enzymes, calcitonin, bloodstream to our bones, thyroxine, all of these things, blinking, nodding unconsciously. So we got all this stuff on the go, but the bottom line is, with all the perceptions and all the things coming in, which ones do you ultimately pay attention to?
And that is the question indeed.
And it's the one that changes your life, right?
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Mike Mandel, for being part of this podcast.
Glad to be here.
And
You're going to hold my hand there?
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good strong grip.